All right, hello. I'm ever-changing butterfly bringing to you Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we'll discuss the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD or NVLD. In today's podcast, we'll discuss what it's like for Amy and I, Jennifer, to live with NLD. So the first question is, when were you diagnosed with NLD?
Hi, Jen. So I was diagnosed with NLD when I was almost 22. I think it was the month before my 22nd birthday. I went to student support services with issues with my housemates. I was having problems connected with them, bonding them with them. I felt like I was a bit bullied, actually, because they used to exclude me from activities and stuff. And like they were like a few years younger than me as well, because I started university when I was 21 and they were 18. So like there was already an age gap anyway, and like I didn't share the same interests with them or anything. So like I went to student support services saying like I want to move to a different student housing and be placed with people that like I'm have more interests with and who maybe are a little bit older. And like she wanted me to go into more detail about my issues. So I think I was very close to tears, and I just said, look, I think I have Asperger's. And I explained my reasons why with difficulty making friends, like poor motor skills, things like that. And I said I've always wanted to get a diagnosis. I've always wanted to be tested, but as an adult, I found it really hard to get like a doctor to listen to me and like send me off to be referred. But I was diagnosed with global learning delay and speech therapy anyway from about the ages of 2 or 3. But like I always felt it was more than just learning issues and speech delay. I've always thought it was more. I've always felt different and like I'm on the outside looking in, I guess. And she was really helpful. She said, look, we can refer you to someone that works with the university. Like, I'll arrange for you to speak to her and get tested. So, yeah, and it was really easy, luckily.
Yeah, I'm glad it was easy for you. For me, I got diagnosed when I was 19, and I kind of always had a hunch that I was different in some way from everybody in my family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I started to think that way when I was probably in high school, because I realized that I was comparing myself a lot to my brother and realizing that there were some things that came more naturally to him than to me. So like math and writing and science, when you had math in it, like chemistry and physics. So
yeah,
I was noticing that. And when I went into college, I was noticing that those things didn't go away, and it became harder because I was at UC Berkeley, and that's a really hard school to get into. And it was also a high academic level for me. And I had a roommate who was deaf, and I knew about the disability department through her.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe I could get testing, or at least find out where to get it from them. So I scheduled an appointment to just talk to a counselor there. And I remember when I did it, I wasn't quite sure how to go about it, but I mentioned being homeschooled because I thought, that would be important, because I knew that that wasn't very common. And I thought, maybe that would have to do with something. And, I loved being homeschooled, and I thought that really helped with me being able to learn better, because I had access to tutors and it helped me really excel in
Mhm.
high school. Um, so, you know, once I once they told me where I could get testing done, it was pretty easy to do it. I actually kind of had fun with it because I it wasn't like academic testing. It was like, okay, this is fun. I wonder what this is going to show. Um, so
Yeah, I remember listening to one of your podcasts. So I remember you saying you had like, a lot of different tests done for them to diagnose you with NLD, like a lot of
yeah,
like just different types of tests. And like mine was like completely different to yours. I don't know whether it's because we're from different countries, but mine was just basically um, my the educational psychologist asked for my statements
mm,
from school. Like I don't know if it's a different word, like EHCPs, basically just talking about the help I received
mm,
from classes, and like yeah, about my speech delay, about the extra help I needed, and how I got on throughout the year. Look through my medical history. I did like a Asperger's kind of test, and I received negative on that. And she wanted me to do an IQ test as well, but my mum refused. She said, "No, I'm not allowing Amy to have a test, an IQ test, because it'll really affect her self-esteem if she gets like a really low score."
mm.
And yeah, so I didn't have that. And then it was just basically just a meeting with her and my parents, and that was it. So my experience was completely different to yours.
Yeah, it definitely could be because you're from England and um, you know, I'm from the United States. I, I think that that definitely is part of it because, you know, for me, um, like you said, I had a lot of different tests done. I know one of them, if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, was the Vissler or test. Probably didn't say it correctly, but it it's I know that the person was Romanian, and they also are known for the ink dot test
Mm-hmm.
uh, that you do, that some therapists show you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, they had, I did a lot of those. Um, and it was just really interesting where it, you know, whenever I did them, I was really wondering, okay, you know, what is it gonna, what is the outcome gonna be? And um, I, I remember one of them being where it would have me memorize a series of numbers forwards and backwards,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really good at doing that. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this is easy.
Yeah.
I was like, this is way too easy. Um, and so some of them were, you know, a little bit harder. Like one of them, I think, was about mathematics, and I had to do like a page of either multiplication or division, and maybe it was a mix of the two. Um, and they would time how fast I could do it. And that was a little tricky because I know for people with NLD, they do have a slower mental math calculation
Mm-hmm.
speed. And I have gotten better at that since then. So, you know, I would wonder if I did that again and if it would be different. Um, so that was like, that was what some of them were like for me. Um,
It
so
was over like a series of days or weeks.
yeah, it was probably about two or 3 weeks, I would say.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I think it was like probably 15 tests. Um,
Really?
yeah, and it they took they could take maybe 3 to 4 hours each, depending on what they were.
Mm.
Um, and sometimes we could do more than one each day. But I think it depended on how I felt after each one, and my energy level. Um,
Cool.
and um, I think sometimes we did like two, but maybe not more than two. Um,
Mm. Yeah, that sounds really exhausting.
I think it was sometimes, but I also remember being okay with it because I was doing it during the time when I was studying for my finals, which was perfect because I didn't have to go to any classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I had plenty of time to do it. I I could even go there on the weekends because they were open during the weekends, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty flexible. Um, so let's see. So the second question was about um, what you think caused it for you.
The education psychologist, she never said to me what caused my NLD. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know whether it could be like genetic or traumatic or another reason until I started to research NLD after my diagnosis. Like, I just thought you were born with it. I didn't know whether it could be trauma. Um, I do think it's genetic because the symptoms of autism and NLD on my dad's side of the family. I think my dad might have it, NLD or Asperger's. My cousin has ADHD and he's got an official diagnosis of that. So I do think it's genetic, but if it is traumatic, I think it may have been through banging into a door around the age of 1 or 2, and I got like, a massive bump on my head.
Ooh,
So yeah, like it was huge, like the size of an egg.
ouch.
So yeah, I know. So yeah, but personally, I do think it's genetic.
Yeah, so I can kind of relate to both of those. Um, for me, they said I was probably born with it, and I would agree with that because my dad is adopted, and we don't know much about his side of the family because they didn't keep very good records back when he was adopted.
Mm.
Um, and because of that, we don't know whether it came from his dad or from his mom,
Mm.
um, or if if or if a trauma caused it. If a trauma caused it for me, it could have been. Um, I also had a bumped my head on something where I think it was marble hearth in our house. It was my fireplace, and it was a pretty big bump too. I think I remember actually I had to get stitches for it.
Wow, that bad.
Yeah, and I remember I I don't know exactly how many stitches. It could have been about um, maybe 20. Uh, it probably felt like that. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I remember when I was at the hospital, and it was probably the emergency room because I remember my dad and my aunt driving me there, and my head was in my dad's lap. My feet were in my aunt's lap.
Mm.
So I was like stretched across them. And I'm sure they were rushing there because I was bleeding.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember when I was in the hospital, they had to hold my head down and my feet down. So I couldn't move, jerk my head or kick the person doing the stitches.
Mm.
Because even though they numbed the area, I could still feel it, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, so that, I mean, that could have caused it, but I'm not so sure it did because there's still a lot, I think, to be found out about NLD because of being so new.
Definitely.
Um, that, like you said, it could be traumatic or it could have been genetic. Um, so, and I'm leaning more towards the genetic for me because I do see some of the characteristics that I have in my dad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just like where I have my own pace that I like to move at, and so does he. Um, and but he's good at math, so
So's my dad, and I'm not.
yeah. And it's like, well, he helped me get better at math, so
Mm.
that's a good thing. Um, and it's it's like he hasn't been tested, so I'm just relying on the things I know about for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the other things I've noticed is that sometimes um, when we're talking recently, I something I pick up on is how sensitive I am to tone of voice, and it seems like he is too. And so it's like, okay, that's a nonverbal thing, and it's like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's something, but I may never know if he has it or not. So
That's interesting. Like, it could come from both of our fathers. So, like, maybe it's the father's gene for most people. Like, would you agree?
it could be. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I think you know more research would have to be done about that, but it definitely could be.
Mm-hmm. It's
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, it is definitely interesting. Um, I think researchers definitely could find out that it could relate to fathers, um, or maybe it relates to mothers too. But I know for me, if I look at my mom, I don't see as many characteristics in her as I do with my dad. So it's like, okay,
Yeah, I'm basically my father's double as well.
yeah,
So, like,
I would agree with you with that. It's like, hmm. um, so, how do you feel about having LD, Amy?
I'm like, I do feel frustrated like a lot of the time because of, like you said, it's such a new condition and it's really still misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's not really much support for us, and like there's a lot more support for like Asperger's and other autism spectrum disorders. Like, rightly so. Like, obviously everybody needs support that has a disability, but because no one knows what NLD is, they like what might support someone with autism might not be able to might have the right same support with someone with NLD because there's differences. So yeah, and I yeah, I just feel very frustrated on like a daily basis and just like really misunderstood really.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I think for me, I often feel frustrated too, especially when I feel like I can't explain something really well. Like, I feel like I should be able to because we tend to be so good with words. And it's like, I have all the words in my head. Why aren't they coming out? Um,
Exactly.
and I know for me, sometimes I get frustrated when I have to keep working at a challenge that I've been working at for a while. Like, one of them is trying to learn how to manage money better, or how my tone of voice is conveyed to others, or understanding body language.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a short list. There's a lot of them.
And also, like, like my whole life, I've struggled to realize whether someone is being friendly or if they want to be your friend.
Yes, I can relate to that too. Yeah, it's like, it, especially that find that challenging, like over technology, because you just have words to look at. You have no visual to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
where I feel like we do rely a little bit on visual, where, okay, is their body language conveying something? It could be, are they, I don't know, um, you know, do they look interested in what we're talking about, um, or disinterested also? Um, and like you said, if they're trying to be friendly, they could be doing it in a misleading way, and then they would be trying to take advantage of us, which I think, I know that can happen more to people who have NLD because of what I've read in some of the research of us being more trusting of um, strangers, um, which I think is unfortunate that that happens.
Of course, as well. Yeah, like luckily I haven't been in any like dangerous situations, but like I know it can happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like it's if you have, and it's also hard to differentiate between an acquaintance and a friend as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I know for me, when I was in college, I was having a hard time, where is somebody a friend or are they an acquaintance? And I realized that the people that were friends and true friends wouldn't stab me in the back and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, tattletale, or, be mean to me. Whereas the people who were truly my friends would listen to me and would support me in many ways that I needed. Um, and I try to keep in touch with those people because I want to be able to, keep those relationships.
Definitely. And we also put a lot more effort into friendships as well, I've noticed. And we take our friendships very seriously.
Yes, I agree with that. We do. Um, and I know, like you said, um, you're right that things like Asperger's and autism do have more um, help. And I think that they do because when it, I don't know if it's correct to say they've been around longer, but maybe that researchers in science and psychologists have known about them more. Um, and so, you know, now they have to catch up on NLD and learn about it more because of it being new, uh,
Mm-hmm.
in order for us to get the help that we need. Um, which is why when I discovered the NVLD project, I thought that was really cool, because I literally just found them one day when I was doing research for my podcast. By I was just typing in one of the topics, and their website popped up, and I was like, I wonder what this is. And so I clicked on it, and I saw one of the stories from somebody who has NLD, and I read it, and I was like, this would be good material for me to use, because at that point I didn't have any connections with anybody else who had NLD.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I started the podcasts. Would just use their website to find stories of other people who um, were talking about whatever topic I was going to use, so
Mm-hmm.
that I could have another thing to use or another story, um, which I really liked having that, because then it was like something else for me to relate to, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought that um, the listeners would like that too.
Definitely. Because like, we do feel alone. So like hearing other people's stories and stuff, like, you can really relate
Mm-hmm.
because we're such a small group around the world. Like there's hardly any of us.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's why I I tend to give the link to the article in the description, so that people can go read it if they want to, because I usually just quote a paragraph of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I know the NVLD project is they are doing research on NLD, and they are um, trying to get it back on the um, diagnostics statistical manual. It's not easy to say, uh,
Yeah.
or the DSM. And I was just going to talk about that for a little bit, because I know that it used to be on the DSM. And I think the reason why I was taken off is because people don't really know what it is, because of it being so new and not understood completely. Um, and I think if people, if there was more information about it out there, it would be easier to understand and know more about it, and also for it to get back on the DSM. And you know if I understand correctly what the DSM provides, I think it provides um, better accommodations for students, and um, also that would make their academic life easier. And um, you know once it's on the DSM, I think it would, be like, okay, yeah, it is a learning challenge, and it's something that is difficult to have.
Exactly. And because it isn't in a DSM, when you tell people you have NLD, they think you've made it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I haven't know this on it's on the DCM. I haven't read any articles on it. Like, it's like, well, I'm not making it up. This is a real disability. It affects me every day of my life. It is real. And I am just outraged it was taken out just because it's misunderstood.
Exactly. And it's like, for me, I don't usually use the word disability, because you know I don't usually feel disabled. I feel, like I'm just different, and I have a. Sometimes I feel like, disabled can have a lot of what's the word? I guess you could say charge behind it. So that's where I created learning challenge phrase for the podcast, and I've really liked using that, because um, it for me, it's like, okay, yes, I do have a challenge at learning things that some people, are really good at, and it's easier for them to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also true for other people who have an LD,
Mm-hmm.
um, which actually is a good segue for the next question. Whether it's trying to remind yourself of the positive things of having NLD, working through your challenges, or being empathetic for others like us, I and Amy and others who have NLD still experience these and many more things every day in our lives. As I wrap up today, there are a couple of things I'd like to share with you. I have recently created a website, Facebook, and Instagram account for my podcast. The name of the website is livingwithnld.com. I would love to know what is the most difficult thing you encounter with having NLD. If you're listening on Spotify or someone else, please shoot me an email at livingwithnld@gmail.com. If you're listening on livingwithnld.com, please leave a comment below the episode. Also, here is an app that you may find helpful for you. The Khan Academy can help you get better at different kinds of math, including statistics, algebra, calculus, and geometry. It can also help you study for the SATs and ACTs. Not sure if you are a new listener or not, but I would like you to know where I get most of my stories that I use in my podcast. Hey, I know I of a nonprofit that I would really like to help. It's the NVLD project. In addition to doing research on NVLD and working to get it back on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that is the DSM, they provide support groups for those with NVLD. You can find the NVLD project at www.nvld.org. All proceeds will go towards the NVLD project. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. In conclusion, I would like to hear from you, please. If you know anyone that has NLD and I could interview for this podcast, like I just did with Amy today, please shoot me an email at livingwithnld@gmail.com. I will leave that in the description for you. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed learning some new things today. Bye.